The Gideon Orkar Coup of 1990 changed everything in Nigeria's military politics. How did June 12 shape the politics of today? What role did General Oladipo Diya play in these sagas? Remember General Sani Abacha? Oladipo Diya was the number 2 man in Abacha's time, before the Phantom Coup. What happened? I want to read a book to you. The author says, on April 19th, 1990, there was a botched coup d'etat. The execution of the coup, generally called the Orkar Coup, was very ferocious. Many lives were lost. The significance of the coup was that it gave political expression to the resentment of the minority ethnic groups against the perceived Hausa-Fulani hegemonistic control of political power in Nigeria. I just read from the book, Destiny Anchored on Faith, the story of General Oladipo Diya, written by Oluranti Afowowe. He is my guest on State Affairs. Dr. Afowowe, it's good to have you on State Affairs.
It's a pleasure to be your guest. I'm very grateful.
You know, while reading this book and I came to this chapter where you talked about the Orkar Coup, it reminded me of a coup that had the capacity to change the ethnic argument in Nigeria. Let's reflect on that coup. How did that coup change military politics in this country?
Thank you, sir, for having me. We need to have a sense of history to be able to appreciate what the Orkar Coup did to Nigerian politics and indeed Nigerian military. Hitherto, there was a semblance of unity within the military. I mean, by virtue of their training, orientations, the military were supposed to be, in quote, highly patriotic human beings who do not have ethnic sentiments. But what happened, beginning from the first coup of January 15, 1966, we began to see semblance of disunity, in quote, within the military, where we have people from a particular section. But if we really investigate the coup of January 15, 1966, you will discover that it was not as if that it was conceived as a ethnic coup. It is because of the conspiratorial nature of coups that you speak with people that you have trust in, that eventually accumulated into what we call, in quote, Igbo coup of January 15, 1966. And if you look at the return march too, you also discover that it was, again, in quote, Hausa-Fulani coup. And when you look at composition of people, the major people that carried out the coup, they were particularly from a particular section of the country. And the victims were also from a particular section of the country. But this thing was not giving concretization in one sense, to be able to say, oh, these are sectional, ethnical, oriented army that we have in Nigeria. But what that Orkar Coup did was to put everything on table. For the first time, we had official categorical statement from a rank of Nigerian military, a section of Nigerian military, saying that indeed some people are unjustly dominating Nigerian state, and therefore, in fact, it wanted them out of Nigeria. Of course, this was a kind of rebellion, and at the end of that coup, the Nigerian military was not to be the same again.
Was that coup a form of revolution?
In a sense, it's a revolution. It's a revolution because it wants to change the existing order. The thing is that what we need to now evaluate is whether that revolution was a well-prepared one, whether it has the capacity, the machinery with which to change society. Because we are talking about just a section, exclusive section of society being conscientized in quote, the officers concerned, not the rank and file of the state.
It was a coup to fight for minority rights in Nigeria.
Very correct.
And the plan was to cut out the Fulani Hausa section of Nigeria out of the country.
Yes, that was the plan. Leaving the Middle East and the southern Nigeria to remain in Nigeria.
And they were aggressive. You used the word ferocious.
Yes.
They almost got Babangida.
Yes. Colonel Uke Bello died through that coup. So many officers were lost.
Babangida survived it.
He survived it.
At this time, General Oladipo Diya was the GOC, General Officer Commanding of the 82 Division, Enugu.
Yes, very correct. Where that coup occurred, the way Nigerian Army was organized since 1976, Dimka coup, they now organize the military in such a way that it becomes very difficult for junior officers to be able to effectively take control of Nigeria. So Nigeria now have military divisions, different divisions. Each of these divisions are big enough. Within the division you have brigades. Within brigades you have battalions. Then between battalions you have platoons and the rest of it. So each division is so organized, so big enough that it could take on the whole country if need be. Because they have looked at the samples of what happened in the past through military coups. So immediately that coup occurred, General Diya was already mobilizing his troops from Enugu to storm Lagos. Of course, after the coup was foiled by the troops in Lagos, there was no need for him to come down to Lagos again. But he had been making an attempt to come and defend the Nigerian state because that was the pledge that he made to defend the integrity of Nigerian state.
He was loyal to the IBB government.
Well, you may say IBB government because he represented Nigeria at that time. He was an officer of Nigerian state, and the sovereignty of Nigerian state was under threat. And he has a mandate to defend it, and that was what he was planning to do. Of course, if you look at his action thereafter, you also see that his loyalty was really not to Babangida, was to the Nigerian state. Because at the first AF Armed Forces Ruling Council meeting, after that coup, it was the officer that rose up and said, look, yes, we have defeated people, we can be patting ourselves at the back for a good job, but there are fundamental issues that were raised by these boys. These issues must not be swept under the carpet. We need to address them so that these things like this should not happen again. Of course, for that statement, he lost his command that day. He was removed as GOC that day.
By virtue of being the GOC,
yes,
automatically he had a membership of the Armed Forces Ruling Council.
Yes.
So when he was removed as GOC, he lost that position in the council.
He lost everything within the military. In fact, he was appointed what they call Director of Research and Development, an office that never existed.
He lost his position because he spoke on behalf of the ideals
yes,
that the coup plotters stood for.
Yes.
And Babangida did not take that lightly.
At all. Well, Babangida did not tell him that. What Babangida told him, according to what from interview I had with him, was that he's so intelligent and he needed someone to help him reorganize the military in a way that made the armed forces Nigeria more effective and effective operationally. And he was so happy that if that is the response we were going to give to him, he now moved to the office of Chief of Army Staff.
Before going to see Abacha, who was the Chief of Army Staff,
yes,
Diya had
gone to General
Babangida when he noticed that the office where he was posted was outside military formation.
Yes.
It was somewhere in Ikoyi.
Yes.
The secretariat.
Ikoyi.
Can you tell me about that office?
Well, it was an office meant to humiliate him. Because since he was a captain in the army during the Civil War and later became a major, he had always had because he was a commander of battalions, he always have offices that were private toilet. This time around, when he was a major general, a former GOC, redeployed to Lagos from Enugu, when he asked for his office, they now show him an office next to toilet, a room next to toilet. No staff, no military staff, no administrative staff, nothing. That was why I was shocked that how could this happen to him? Where are the people that I'm supposed to?
By this time, he didn't know his offense.
He didn't know. He now went to Babangida that what could have happened? And Babangida told him, oh, you are so intelligent, you are good, and I want you to now use your intellect for military. It was when he now moved to General Abacha's office, that I just confronted him and said, yeah, you service 20. For that office, you go speak your 20 tire.
Turenchi was
English.
His position at the Armed Forces Ruling Council.
Yes.
The English he spoke there.
Yes.
That was the Turenchi Abacha was referring to.
That you are the ideal person. Yep. You are the only one who can speak. Others cannot speak. Of course, what Nigeria told me was that at the end of the meeting, most of the officers came to meet him and congratulate him. That, you spoke my mind. But none of them spoke. In fact, he said after he finished his address at the Armed Forces Council that day, that if you drop a pin, you will hear the voice. They all kept mute. And he never knew that he has said anything bad until he received signal that he has been removed as GOC. It was now General Abacha that told him that, look, you are going to stay, that's why you are going to retire in that office. And at that period, he didn't know what to do, but he now knew, think about it, to turn that to an advantage. He now solicited for study leave to go and study, so as to stop the humiliation, because it was meant to be humiliation. That was how and why he became endeared to General Abacha. They became friends.
While reading your book, at some point he thought of resigning.
Yes, he wanted to resign. That was his immediate thought. From what he told me, he wanted to resign, but he was the most senior commission officer in the entire Nigerian army from Yoruba stock at that time. And you know, the Orkar Coup had portrayed the military as a divided bloc, championing ethnic causes. If General Diya, who was then the most senior Yoruba officer, was arrested as part of the coup, it would have send a signal to the public that the Yorubas were also involved. But they were trying to say, look, it was just some boys, inconsequential middle rank officers. So that was why Diya was not. So because of that, he could not resign his commission at that time. He wanted to, because it's the act of humiliation. You have seen it, or this was a man that had been through military coup, through civil wars, who has done everything within his power to serve the country faithfully, and only to be rewarded with that kind of humiliation.
You know what happened in the Armed Forces Ruling Council that speaks volume about how leadership, those in leadership position, reacts to events. Only one person could speak up. That was Diya.
Yes.
Yet others had it in mind to say the same thing. They could not speak up.
Oh, yes. In fact, General told me several examples within the military. It's unfortunate. That's why when people call for military regime, they didn't know what they are talking about. For example, he told me that at a point, you know, the major strain of Nigeria economy is oil, the crude oil thing. He felt that, look, we were giving licenses, military were giving licenses to individuals to be exploring this oil and become so wealthy through it. He felt that if Nigeria could be giving oil licenses to individuals, so why can't it be given to state governments? That if these licenses are given to state government to explore and probably build refineries, these states become buoyant and they will be in position to fund activities. I told this to AFRC. It was shouted down. The socialist, communist. And the man merely had, he was not a communist, he was not a socialist per se, but he asked this nationalistic feeling that what can we do? What should be collective wealth should not be cornered by individuals. That was his thinking. And of course, you know, that is still what we have up to today.
Having been granted that leave, education leave,
yes,
he went to University of Nigeria, Nsukka,
yes, sir,
to study law.
To study law.
And in the middle of that story, that was, I think, about 2 years after
yes,
starting the course.
Yes. As there was another development, Nigeria now decided to start a national war college. And starting that national war college, they needed technical assistance. And they sought for technical assistance from Britain. In order to do this, Britain will have to send down officers. And part of the agreement that Britain was going to appoint deputy commandant. And so Britain appointed deputy commandant and communicated the profile and everything to the Nigerian army. We view that Nigerian army now will provide the commandant. And doing so, it's a tradition in the military that you don't allow junior officer to supervise superior officer. Looking through the records of the man suggested, and they went through the records of Nigerian army, it was only General Diya that is superior to him, that was superior to him then. And at that time, if you look at General, he had a very impressive record. He was commandant at UNO peacekeeping force in Lebanon. I mean, he had very extensive. And
by this time, he had already been the military administrator of Ogun State.
Ogun State. So
under Buhari.
Yeah. What matters to the military itself is the kind of training. He had gone through so many training where he is there. I mean, he was the first officer in Nigeria to have this airborne medal. I mean, as he was a colonel there, he went to parachute training in America. You know, many officers who don't want to die when you are already a colonel, you want to begin to enjoy. He had to jump down from the plane at least minimum of 5 times as an officer, and he did it. So he had very impressive records. So they now appointed. Nigeria now saw it as opportunity for him to have his own back on the military, because he was humiliated out of the military for saying the truth.
Not out of the military.
Out of operational office as a GOC. Now he was granted study leave. He was now recalled from study leave to come and assume office as commandant of Nigerian Defense. Well, now to General Abacha. That was why it became close. That look,
Abacha at this time was still the chief of army staff.
Sir, you are the one who gave me permission to read law. I still have 2 more years to go to complete my program. And sir, I don't start a thing that will not finish. His thinking was that they were going to say, okay, go. What they needed to do was to tell Britain that, look, step down the profile of the deputy commandant, give us a lower ranking officer that we can get a superior one for. But Abacha did not do that. He said, okay, yes, true. I permitted you to read law. We will not start National War College until you are through. And that was why Nigerian National War College was delayed for 2 years. And that was how General Diya ended up becoming the pioneer commandant of National War College.
Abacha saved him from humiliation.
Sure, it saved him from humiliation.
Abacha brought him up again.
Yes.
As the commandant of War College.
Yes.
So by this time, that relationship with Abacha was forming.
Yes.
And he was consolidating that friendship.
Yes. That was the basis of their consolidation. And so when issue began to happen, and because he had credibility in the army, when the Babangida was already playing everybody, changing this every time.
The Maradona.
The military became disenchanted with what he was doing. And the military thought that he was bringing the profession to disrepute. And so they wanted to do something. So they constituted a formal committee, and General Diya again was now appointed to be chairman of that committee. It was that committee that now made different recommendations to the military. To cut the long story short, it was that committee that actually forced Babangida to step aside.